He will take the things that they've failed at, he'll take the things that they're good at, he'll take their gifting, and he'll take the learning that they got from all the beaten up bruises they got in the world, and he will bring along the people that need to hear what you can say.
What's your story?
I guess in some ways it's quite similar to people who come to the Lord, and again, maybe different in a lot of ways. I was raised a Baptist boy in North Carolina. We were a military family, but we were outside of Fort Bragg, North Carolina, a little tiny town, little Baptist church, 90 people. I think it still has 90 people in the town. Got some good basics there. Then traveled around in the service. We were Episcopalians for 8 or 10 years. I was confirmed in the church, the Episcopal Church, in '74. I believe that day I truly understood and accepted the Lord as my Savior. I was 12. High school, different, normal life a little bit. The world crept in. Teenager and college, away from home. I graduated high school. My parents immediately went back to Germany. I was in Texas A&M, no family, no relatives, and free to burst upon the scene in all of its sinful glory, and very quickly was doing everything and anything. Drugs, sex, rock and roll. And it was about this time when I was 21 that I realized that everything that I had been involved in up to that point had ended in violence. I didn't really think that it was that unusual. I don't know how you can be that blind. But one day I was a junior, and the ROTC and I were having a discussion about whether I was going to continue as training as a military officer, and we mutually decided, or they decided, that it wasn't going to be my path. But there that day was a counselor guy. We got talking, and he starts asking me questions, and like reading my mail sort of thing. I didn't know that term then, but what was your dad like? Real one or stepdad? What was your family like? And then out of the blue, he just says, how many fights have you been in? How many physical altercations have you been in? And I said, you mean like my whole life? And he said, yeah. And I said, I don't know, 300 maybe? And he said, yeah, I thought you were going to say a number like that. And then I just said those words at 21, that I had been in almost 300 physical altercations. And that was the first time that came to me as odd, or that it was a realization that where I thought I was, I wasn't. There was a land of reality, and I wasn't living in it. That I had been alive less than 25 years, and the earliest time of my life in first grade, in second grade, in third grade, in fourth grade, moving around different schools, mad at the teacher, mad. If you'd have asked me before that day, was I mad? I could have told you about individual things, but I wasn't a mad person. I wasn't an angry person. I was fun. I had friends. Everybody wanted to hang out with Fritz. I wish that moment, between that moment and becoming healed and whole, was quick. It wasn't even close.
What were some of the root issues of why you were angry?
My dad found out my mom was pregnant, and he left. My mother, through her own ugly upbringing, a couple of rapes, some other things. When I was born, my grandparents were horrified, and they left the country with my pregnant mother and came back 3 years later so they could tell a mysterious story about how her husband had gotten killed, because it was too shameful to have their daughter be out of wedlock and have a baby. Now, I didn't know that then, of course, but that's spiritual stuff, right? And my mother and my grandmother were incredibly conditional. They even said, if you're not going to do exactly what we say, then how could we love you? Why would we love you? Why would we take care of you? That put me in a position to be weak. When your dad's not there, there's a covering, there's a presence. They've interviewed child molesters, and they say, what's the thing you look at? And they go, well, look at the boy, his dad. The dad's around, that's worrisome. If the dad looks like he means business, we just go find another boy. And there was no time, there's no memory of my life as early as I can go back that I was not being sexually violated in some way. Every frame of my life, 4th grade, 3rd grade, 2nd grade, 1st grade. One of the I think the thing that spun it out was one of the guys came around my stepdad at the time, who was not a good stepdad, violent and condemning, and he was sleeping with my sister that I didn't know. But this guy came by the house, and I can remember screaming internally, for my dad to get him. But I couldn't open my mouth. I couldn't say, And I that was the moment of terror. Which it was in the middle of the day. I was safe. It was a sunny day. It wasn't like I was in imminent danger right there. But that was that terror was palpable.
Have you ever shared this with another human being?
Yeah, so yeah, that's part of the healing. I was asked a few times by people in the church over some years later, and I got asked to leave that church. I broke a guy's jaw. How dare you ask me that? In 98, a few years after, 89, I'd gotten divorced to a woman that I loved, and I was asking myself, how did I get in this position? I loved her, but I didn't act like it. I'm a relatively intelligent person. I had you'll laugh, I said I had a good upbringing, because everybody's perfect when you've got a picture created. You don't create an ugly picture, you create a perfect picture. And this moment, I'm divorced, I've been living in a truck. I found a friend who let me live in his extra room, and it was 10/24/94. I said 98 at first, but it was 94. And I was having this moment with myself. How did I get to this point? How did I get to this point? I don't understand it. And then this thought came to my head. It said, oh my God, I haven't talked to God. And I don't even know if I finished the sentence, but the end of the sentence was since beginning of high school. And this agony like this loss, this pain, like I've been gone away from love, and there was lightning in my room, and I began probably 3 hours of intense weeping, like it would slow down for a little while, and then I would just, snot, and I just begged the Lord to take me back. It started raining in the room. Like a misty, cool rain. About dawn, I fell asleep, and I got up the next morning and knew, wow, we were on a different path. I went and found every friend and asked them where they went to church, where should I go. I had been an Episcopalian last. I went to that one once or twice, another one, and then a friend said, "Hey, there's a little Baptist church over here in Charlotte." I'm living in Charlotte. I can't remember the name of it now. Hickory Grove Baptist Church. And I walked in and sat all the way in the back, and the pastor said something, I don't know what it was, but the entire room went dark, and it was me and him, and he was talking about me, and he was breaking down the pieces of my life, and I started to cry, and I cried in the back of the church the entire service. And I bawled in the car, and I asked the Lord, show me what to do. And then you'll I don't know. I very quickly got a great job, and I very quickly started making a bunch of money, and I very quickly quit worrying about, I went to church, but I quit worrying. I just figured everything was fine. I'm blessed now. I've got a job. It wasn't long after that I met my wife, and we've now been 24, 25 years of marriage. The children, I put the children at the center of our bullseye, and nothing else mattered except making sure that my desire was to be a good dad, the best dad and the best husband.
Do your wife and your children know your backstory?
The children, some. I've mentioned, that there was some sexual things in my life when I was young. Yes, recently, they're 23 and about to be 21. So yes. Where was I? So we met Kim. We had the children, and so I went up and up and up, and then I feel this call, like I'm supposed to be serving the Lord. I'm supposed to be doing something, and I'm not very good at doing. Said serve one and hate the other. And I self-sabotaged a $150,000 a year job, and sort of went off the rails trying to figure out what I was going to do to please Daddy, to continue his blessing of me. I still felt like if I was not doing right, if you kicked the dog or whatever you did, it was going to be a long time before you could do enough, right? Even though I knew in my head, Jesus paid for that. But what this believes and what this believes, two different things. And so now I find myself in a mess. We moved to South Carolina. We've sold most of our stuff. I'm living with my in-laws. And we get to church, we get to the house, we unpack, and I said to my wife, I said, we both know we don't like your church as as an option for our children. And she said, well, that's fine, Mr. Head of the household, but until you find us a church, I'm taking my children to my church in the morning. And she got up the next morning, got the kids ready, and they went to their church. We've been in her hometown for 12 hours. And to me, this was the lowest possible point that I could be in my life. That I couldn't direct and get my children to the church that I knew they needed to be in. I know that sounds funny, but I fell across the bed and just in total tears. Oh God, what am I going to do? And I felt him right here, and he said, I got it. And I was like, I sat, I was like, oh my God, he does have it. In 2 or 3 days, I found a pastor in the town. We went to his church for a little while. A few months later, another church, and the pastor adopts me. And for the next 3 years, I'm with him every day. If he goes to the funeral, thank God he didn't do too many funerals. He didn't like them. I didn't have to go to too many, but somebody's in the hospital. If he went to training, if he went to visit, I was his boy. And one day he said, we're going to go down here to this church in Columbia, and they're doing worship like we want to do worship. We're going to interview them. We got there. They were busy. They had 3 pastors touring, teaching that day. It turns out they're kind of famous. And they were doing a tour called Word, Spirit, and Power. Jack Taylor, R.T. Kendall, and Bob Currents, I think his name is. They started talking about the Holy Spirit, and they said, at the end, we're going to pray. You don't need to tell us about what it is, because the Holy Spirit will know. And my first reaction was, what kind of weirdos are these people? They don't even want to know what I want to pray for. And then I was like, well, he is a God. He is God. Right? He is supernatural, I guess. I'm going to go down there. And the more they spoke, it's 20 minutes each, Word, Spirit, and Power. And they're talking about this being, I was a Baptist, so, miracles went away. And I just knew I had to be up there and get prayed for. And they finished, and like out of the movies, the story, I step over the pew, except it was chairs, and I beeline over for R.T. Kendall, who's coming to our church, by the way. R.T. Kendall's coming to our church in March. And I'm all excited, and he pulls out his hand, and we touch hands, and static goes, boom. It's like in the old days when TVs went off at night. And I'm just bathed in this peace. And then I sort of feel like I'm up against something, and I look up, and I'm at the ceiling of the church. But the peace, joy, a little excitement, this thing is so interesting. I didn't even worry or doubt or think about being at the ceiling. I just basked in it, this love. And a little while later, I started hearing a noise, and it kind of annoyed me, and I was like, noise? And I looked down, and it was me, and I was on R.T. Kendall, like slobber knocker and crying. And I laugh at myself now, because I went, huh. And I just went back to this feeling of pure. And then, poof, I was back standing in front of him, and he smiled and patted me on the shoulder. And I went over and sat down in the chair, and I took my glasses off, and I looked over. Everybody was in line, 3 lines of maybe 300 people each. It was, and I could see gray shirt, tall guy, white guy, black woman. But that's not what got to my brain. And I remember going like that, and I heard the Lord say, that's my people. You're going to see them like that from now on. I didn't have the knowledge, words for spirit, soul, and body. I said, that's Jesus people. And everybody finished, and they started to worship, and this just desire to worship that I like to skip worship. I didn't worship. I hadn't really worshiped ever. I just wanted to hear what the pastor was going to say. If the pastor sounded like he was preaching from the Word, then I was okay. And don't talk about God as Father, just God and Jesus. But not God as Father. I didn't want to hear any of that mess. And why? Of course, because of my history, right? So I'm just feeling this peace and worship, and then I just feel the Lord to tell me to tell this guy something, and I'm like, I'm not going to do that. And I was like, no. He's like, no, go tell him. So bottom line, it's a couple of minutes later, I reach over and I tell him it was something about his work in the church, and he had this incredible reaction, fell down and began to cry. And I can remember being a boy in North Carolina, and the guys would come in the tents and they'd yell and scream, and I was like, well, they're talking about Jesus. And my mother was like, no, we don't do that. We don't. And so all of a sudden, what I find out later is baptized in the Holy Spirit, and I touch a man and I tell him 5 words, and there's an explosion of emotion, and then I'm praising again, and he has another one, and 24 hours later I touch a man who's moments from death in the ICU at the hospital. Touch his big toe because nobody wanted to get out of the way because they'd all said their goodbyes, and I was the new guy, and I just felt like it wasn't his time. And I said, well, because I'm hanging out with the pastor every day, and I said, I really feel like I should pray, it's maybe not. And they were like literally didn't even get out of my way. So I kind of pushed in there, and I reached over, I could just get the guy. But as soon as I knew, I was like, I'm going to touch this guy's big toe, it's over with. Because his heartbeat was going boop, boop. It was that slow. His children said goodbye, his wife had just said it's okay. And I touched his big toe and prayed, 45 seconds. And I let go of his toe, and I looked up, and the heart monitor was going boop, 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 boop. And I looked down, and everybody is looking at me. No, not one person is looking at the guy on the bed or the thing. They've all just witnessed something mind-blowing. And my pastor, who's standing beside me, Steve, he laughed. He's an old country guy. He just laughed, and he goes, okay, we're done. And he takes me out. And that was the beginning of miracle after miracle after miracle. I could tell you one miracle after the next for weeks, nonstop. I've had days where God ministered and healed or exploded somebody's life, 8, 9, 10 meetings in a row. Later I would be Ubering, and I did 5,000 Ubers, and I would come home, and sometimes they'd sit in the back. I'd be out driving, and they would sit in the back seat. Their butt would hit the seat, and it would be immediate ministry, just like that. People cry out and tell something they've never told anybody in their life before. And that was a few years of just unbelievable ministry. So I'm feeling better. I'm doing work for the Lord, and I'm broke as a joke.
Do you feel like the wounding that you went through has given you a sensitivity to other people's pain?
Yeah, I think absolutely. A part of it is my wiring, right? But then the environment, the devil used that to be, I'm just now learning that a lot of times the anger that I was talking to you about and the emotion, it was mine, but as it got worse and I got more out of whack, it would be the person in front of me, or the person behind me, or the person I saw at the movie theater, and there's, it's taken a long time to be able to discern, why all of a sudden why am I feeling that, right? When before it was immediately I would be thinking about my life or what happened to me. And you combine that with the desire to please and to qualify, I think those lead you to be open and aware for opportunities to be of help, right? Because if I was just a good enough boy, my daddy wouldn't have left. If I would have been a better boy, God wouldn't have taken my little brother. My little brother died when I was 6 and he was 4. The church said, well, he was just so perfect, and he came to show you what it was like to be a good boy. They didn't mean to, but I don't think that is the way you put it to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old. So,
have you ever had a chance to meet your real father?
I did. We had 1, 2, 3 years of wonderful visits. He lived in California, and I called him one day, and he said, I think I've done enough. I think I've spent enough time with you. I'm kind of tired of being your dad.
When he said that, how did it make you feel?
Oh, dude. I was unbelievable. The drinking, the whoring, and the fighting that went on for the 2 or 3 years. That was my college, right? Last year, second year of high school, senior year, freshman year of high school. That happened right then. My parents in Germany. It was a derailing of one's life in legendary proportions,
So
man.
it drudged up all that pain.
Yeah. So I get baptized in the Holy Spirit, and we're doing all these things, and things are improving, and I'm moving forward. But then after a while, I'm like, I still am struggling financially. I'm still doing this. Forget all this. I'm going to go back to work. And so I went back to work, took a job, really, I got a great job. Came back to Georgia in 12. The kind of job you dream about, the kind of job you buy almost any house in the city. But it was like a fire shut up in my bones. I would spend all day at offices, and I would talk about Jesus, and I wouldn't get any work done. And then I would go, God, that was really stupid. And then, so after 4 years of that, back to where I had been, like, man, just get what's important. And so 6 months ago, I was sitting in the parking lot of a gym on 92. Not going into the gym, but I had pulled over. I was door dashing, and I just pulled into a parking lot, and I just had a moment. I said, Lord, I'm not going to stop talking about you. Whether you finally deliver on your promises, whether you don't, whether I get run over by a car, whether my wife leaves me because I'm not making money, or I win the lottery, I am not going to stop talking about you. And 2 hours later, I'm in the gym, because I just felt like I'm supposed to go in there, and I start talking to this guy, and I tell him my story. He says, man, you should come to church, man. You should come to Restoration. He said, COVID's 2 years old, man. When are you going to get back into church? And I felt the little stiletto elbow in your side, right?
Who was that guy?
Asher, our evangelist for the people, the 20 to 30-year-olds. Do you know him? And I got there the next day. So it was either Tuesday night, and then I went Wednesday night, or it was Saturday night, and I went Sunday to church. I don't remember which was the first visit. And somebody said something to me as I came in that my old pastor used to say. And then we come in and sit down, and we get started, and their hands up, and then Pastor Chuck says, at the end we're going to come down. Come down for prayer. And he sort of leans down and looks over at me. He doesn't know me from Adam, but he looks directly at me, and I'm like, uh-oh, Lord's got something on afoot. And service ended, and he made a beeline for me, and I walked down to him, and he laid hands on my shoulders, and he started praying and reading my mail. And Lord was saying, you're at the right place. And there's just been I guess when you commit to the Lord, and I quit worrying about the maelstrom that's around, job, no job, money, no money, wife's happy, wife's unhappy, children are happy, unhappy. When you finally get to the point that you're the Lord's, Paul said, whether I live, I'm the Lord's, whether I die, I'm the Lord's. So whether I live or whether I die, I am the Lord's. And I think you hit that point that you know that Christ is King, that it's Peter said, we didn't believe cunningly devised fables when we told you about his majesty. We held him with our hands. We saw him as the beloved Son of the living God. Well, you're in the world, not of it. And it's so freeing, because now I can just walk around and do what I'm supposed to do, and God, I'm doing what I need to do, and God brings me people that he has a word for. When I tell you I've been a part of every miracle in the Bible, I have, except walking on water, and I have not fed 5,000 people with bread. There is no miracle in the Bible, dead, skin diseases, health, computer, need a new computer, lost your job, need a new husband, healing, cancer, that I have not been a part of. Me, not heard about somebody, me, little old me. And I think that's maybe one of the lessons, or the thing I wanted to say. If you, at any state of intimate knowledge you are with Jesus, whether you're the day one believer or whether you got 3 degrees and letters after your name, if you wake up in the morning and say, I'm thankful, Lord, I want to do something for you. I want to do something. Whatever it is that you're capable of, God will bring you that day somebody that you're capable of delivering something for. In other words, you could be so weak and so scared that all you could muster was, God bless you. God would bring you somebody that day that needed to hear, God bless you. And you'd walk around and they'd say something and you'd feel it and you'd go, well, God bless you. And they'd go, oh my God, that's perfect. And then you'd be like, oh wow. You'd have an epiphany. And the next thing you know, your hope would be increased. Your desire to do more would be increased. Maybe you'd stay in a chapter, a verse a little bit longer. And the next day you might read John 3:16. God so loved the saved world, he gave his only begotten Son. And then they say, Lord, let's do it again. And you'd go out and about and somebody would need to hear exactly what you just figured out. And that can go on for every single individual, regardless of their gifting, regardless of whether they're a teacher and want to go get 4 degrees and write 18 books, or whether they were a servant and need to be behind the scenes all the time, whether they're a mercy and they feel God most only in the presence when they're worshiping, doesn't matter. All that's aside. If they want to do for the Lord, he will take the things that they've failed at, he'll take the things that they're good at, he'll take their gifting, and he'll take the learning that they got from all the beaten up bruises they got in the world, and he will bring along the people that need to hear what you can say. And I want to tell you, man, and I know you know this, when you do something for the Lord and that person realizes the Lord put you in front of them. I have been literally 75 or 8,500 times this close to a person and had God do something in their life, and they go like this. Oh my God, you're on purpose. God set you here. This is no accident. And you get my point. And they have that moment, dude. Nothing matters. Nothing else matters. When they have that moment, there is a God. It is true. He does love me. He is here. He wasn't with me in the problems. I can give him this. I will trust him. There is hope. Dude, it's unbelievable. The son of the guy who touched his big toe, and he came back to life. Well, he wasn't all the way dead. This guy was not dead, but he was almost dead. His son called me April of this year. He said, man, Daddy's gone. Daddy finally died. And I said, oh man, I'm sorry. He said, I want to tell you, Fritz, my dad never stopped talking about you. He talked about you every day. He said, I got another day. Donnie was my friend's name. He said, Fritz, you gave my dad 12 more years, 5 more grandchildren, 800 or however many baseball games. He said, I'm going to love you for the rest of my life. Thank you. Now, that was a attaboy for me. That came at a perfect time because I was completely moping and God knew what I needed, right? And I don't tell you that, and I think you know. It's not like, I mean, you just know. It's not like, oh, hey, look at, I'm just saying, God uses what you do. Everything he wants us to do is for you. He says, don't leave the breasts of the wife of your youth. It doesn't mean you wouldn't enjoy having an illicit affair. Yeah, in the moment you would, but she's not going to stay with you. It ain't going to be good. She's going to tell people. You're going to have the conversation with your son. People at work are going to find out. You're going to lose your marriage. Why doesn't he want me to go do that? Why does he want you to do that? Why? Because it's not going to work out. It's not good for you. He wants you to forgive because it's good for you. Yeah, they need to be forgiven, but it's good for you. Not unforgiveness is like drinking poison, wanting them to die. Everything he wants you to do is for you. I used to say, man, no matter what I did for people, no matter how much God blessed them, I would get more out of it. And I truly believe that. It's just, you're going to be growing capacity, growing knowledge, growing love, something. It is for you. All the things that he has you to do. What is it, Elijah? He calls down Elisha calls down the fire, and they kill all the prophets of Baal. And then Jezebel writes him a little note, I'm going to do to you what you did to my things. And he gets scared and he runs. And he goes out, across the desert, and the Lord feeds him. So finally he recuperates and he says, Lord, I know, I'm sorry, I'm the last one. God's like, I got 5,000 more prophets, fool. But this is about you. You were supposed to be in Nineveh. In other words, anybody could have done that job, but God had something for Elijah, or Elijah, whichever it was, in that town, in that job. And so, yeah, we're doing the work, but it's for you too. There's something he wants to nurture in you. There's something he wants to grow, and there's potential yet. And I think of it as like some of that eyes not seen, nor ear heard, nor imagined in the heart. What Lord has in store for you that love God and called according to his purpose. I think it's part of that. It's just like he sees what you can be. He knows. Of course he does, right? And so he knows. And so it doesn't matter that, yeah, hey, we just rock and rolled over here. We kicked it, right? But God's like, I'm going to handle them. I'm going to talk to them. But you, Jeff, or you, Fritz, we're doing this. And it's exciting. 2 hours ago, I went to Chick-fil-A, and I said, hey, man, I got an email that said I get a free drink. And I said, but I don't really want it. I was there for DoorDash. And one of the guys that has seen me, he goes, oh, man, you want a dessert? And I said, man, I better not eat dessert, man. I'm already, And he said, no. So he brings me a brownie. And so we're chatting, and the order gets canceled. So I'm standing there 10 minutes like, oh, it's funny, the order's canceled. And this guy, guess what? He tells me something that's happened to him twice. And when he's a boy, he's never told anybody in his life. And he wanted to know if Jesus really did love him. That was 2 hours ago. And I said, you darn Skippy. Why do you think he's got me here talking to you? And we shared a little bit. Those kind of things happen all the time. Now, yeah, my nonstop talking, verbal, outgoing, personality, yeah, of course, God uses what we are. Not everybody has the same path. Not everybody has the same service. I'm not saying that. But my point is, God's there with you all the time. He doesn't care if he doesn't want you to kick the dog. But if you kick the dog, and you realize, oh man, I wish I hadn't kicked the dog. God's like, you didn't have to kick the dog right there. You were angry, or you were fearful or worried for a second because you forgot about me for a minute. Come here. Let's go get him. You don't have to do that anymore. Let's go do this. And in reality, I believe following the Lord is the most exciting thing that it's possible for you to do. It's more fulfilling. I think everything is a shadow of getting anything that you can do in the natural that's fun and wonderful, it was sinful or not sinful, are shadows of the joy, happiness, and peace that you can have. It says the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, and peace, goodness, kindness, faithfulness, etc. But it can be received or come out of you by doing the things the Lord wants you to do. It's not a list of Now, don't do this, you got to do that, and blah, blah, blah. Well, what's the alternative? Do that? Okay, well, go ahead. Do all those things he doesn't want you to do. What happens? Well, ruin, agony, pain, right? So it seems so obvious that if you just do the things that he wants you to do, you realize he's given us that list, those things, because they're bad for us. And the more we become intimate with him, you get rid of the little lies that you believe. You're too ugly, too short, too fat, too tall, too dumb, not worthy of love, blah, blah, blah. That relationship grows. You don't even, the other stuff. The end of the story is the last year or so, I've been threatened physically 4 or 5 times. And like Neo from The Matrix, I just leaned, I just moved. I didn't have to do it physically. I don't mean they actually got to the punching part. Well, one of them did. But my point is, it was like I'm watching myself, and you could see how, oh, I would have said that. I used to, and literally like you're going, oh, when it first started, somebody said something, and I sort of flinched a little bit. And then immediately I was beside myself. I was like, oh, that's how I would have done. And I still talking, all of a sudden, the thing is dissolved. And it's like, wow. That's peace. I guess, when someone says something has happened to them or they did something, it's hard for us. We can feel bad for them. But, like you say, if you haven't walked in their shoes, right? I mean, someone talks about the thing that bothered them or the thing that ailed them or the thing that tormented them. It sounds bad and you feel bad for them, but, you haven't really experienced it. You can know that it's bad inherently. And the things that happen to me and the things that I've done they're pale in comparison to many other things. But there's such a peace knowing I'm never gonna have to talk myself out of getting in my car and going back across town and beating the you-know-what out of somebody. I'm never gonna have to lay in the corner of my bedroom and cry over breaking that dude's elbow on purpose, backwards, because he wasn't polite enough when he bumped into me. And not have to want to pull my skin from my body when I think about yelling at my children when I didn't want to. And you think, well, why would you do those things anyway, right? That's what anybody said. Well, the fact of the matter is that was the place I was in. And I don't know, I spent so much time and I'm like, man, it's a nice day today. If it's rainy or it doesn't matter. I know that I know that I know that story of God becoming man, walking as Christ, living a sinless life, torturous death, being raised on the 3rd day, sitting at the throne right now is a fact. Like I said earlier, Peter said it best. We didn't believe cunningly devised fables when we told you of his majesty. Yeah, I was taught that as a boy. Yeah, I was indoctrinated. Yeah, maybe some of that's true. But it was a true story. It turns out it's a true story. Because God's proven himself over and over and over and over again. And the freedom in that is unspeakable. I mean, you see people who near death or they died and they come back and they say, words can't describe the color, or the feeling or the love, I've had a few moments where the peace of God, the love came. One of them was at the ceiling of the church in South Carolina, and a couple of other times in my life. And it's like that. You just, and so I say that and saying it's freedom and peace aren't good enough words. You know what I'm saying? A friend of mine called just a little while ago to wish me happy birthday. I haven't seen him in 10 years, and we were laughing about, how time goes. And he goes, "Hey man, do you remember when you punched the wholesaler in the face and you threw him off the tower on a Saturday in front of everybody at the dealership?" And I laughed and I said, yeah, I remember. He goes, "Man, you sound different. What's going on?" That was an hour ago. I had a chance to tell him. I said, yeah, my guy's gone. I had forgotten about the wholesaler and the throwing off the tower. Thank God I lived. I came so close, both accidental, the enemy moving in my life, or wanting to just kill myself. I got very close a couple of times, and I think, God, how lost, how pitiful. The last one was funny. I was practicing. I decided I was going to kill myself. I was going to blow my head off. A friend of mine had some pistols, and it was scary to do, but I started practicing with no rounds, and then I practiced pulling the trigger. And so I decided that night, after drinking with my buddy, I was going to go home and kill myself. And a beautiful silver 38 and 44. No, it was a 38. And on the news, a guy that I knew in the service was on the news because he'd killed himself at a store, and they had it on film. And that part didn't deter me. I was like, he handled his business, to show you kind of where. But my friend says, "Oh man, that looks like a pretty nice pistol." He goes, "Man, that's a shame." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, if somebody kills himself, the police confiscate the gun. The owner never gets it back, whether it's his gun or not." I said, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah." I was like, darn, I can't kill myself now. I can't kill myself now. They'd take my boy's gun. He loves that pistol. That stopped me from killing myself. That's how close. And you just gotta laugh. You're just like, by the grace of God. By the grace of God.
Good share.
God's good, man.